The Russians attacked the defense forces' positions in the southern Slobodansky direction 10 times. Fighting took place near Vovchansk, Prilipki, Odradne, Izbitske, and Lyman. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. 5 enemy assaults were recorded in the Kupyansk direction. The occupiers tried to advance near Stepova, Novoselivka, Pishchane, and towards Hlushivka. We have a guest joining us now. Viktor Tryhubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces Group. Mr. Viktor, congratulations on the holiday.
Congratulations to you on the holiday as well. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes, Mr. Viktor. What is the operational situation in the Kharkiv direction? Is it very important?
In the Kharkiv direction, the situation remains tense and unpredictable in Vovchansk. There, the Russians are trying to actively advance on the outskirts of the city. They are now trying to exert strong pressure, and they are also putting pressure in the Kupyansk direction, but they are not having any particular success. Well, they tried a bit to spin the situation for their own propaganda, but it didn't work out any better. And the Lyman direction remains active, where the Russians are trying to actively infiltrate Ukrainian positions.
Mr. Viktor, regarding the specifics, the use of weapons and tactics concerning the entire direction, is it possible to single out any particular areas there?
Well, if we look at it this way, if we take Vovchansk, it's the active use, besides electronic groups, of actively destroying positions with FPVs. Well, there it's possible, it's close to the border, so it's effective there. That's the first thing from the Russian side. If we take Kupyansk, then yes, there too. There is the advance of small infantry groups and attempts to infiltrate directly into the city itself to reinforce the grouping that is already present in the northern districts. If we look at other directions, again, it's small infantry groups plus drones, although the weather isn't really suitable for drones right now, and using fixed-wing drones isn't always relevant at the moment, so mostly it's quadcopters.
Mr. Viktor, regarding the question of how the enemy replenishes its losses, how quickly and by what means does this happen, at least based on the information that can be made public?
Well, let's put it this way. They aren't really reinforcing their groupings much. Rather, they're replenishing their losses by directly bringing their forces across the border, wherever that's possible. For us, it's mostly possible because there is a direct logistical connection. Understood, at the strategic level. With the exception of the city of Kupyansk, where the city has been more or less effectively isolated, they are currently unable to bring in reinforcements or restore their groupings there. This has become their biggest concern. In other cases, well, the border is actually quite close there. So if we talk about the Velikobolyuk direction or about Vovchansk, there it's possible to bring in reinforcements directly from the border.
I can't help but mention the photo. I'm sure many of our viewers have seen what Vovchansk looks like now. That photo shows the city center, and in particular, there's almost nothing left there. It's just completely destroyed. Is the whole of Vovchansk like that?
Basically, yes. In essence, most of Vovchansk looks exactly like it does currently.
Can we please ask about the future forecasts, if that's even truly possible to do? Regarding the enemy's behavior in the coming days in Kharkiv, on the Kharkiv front.
Here, in general, we don't really like to make predictions. Well, predictions are more for people who don't have to answer for their words later. None of us are Cassandras, none of us really know what will actually happen there, how things will really turn out. Well, we can say that most likely things will continue as they are now. Most likely they will keep using small infantry groups just as they have been. But again, what if they decide to change something in their lives? That happens too.
Absolutely logical and reasonable. Mr. Viktor, we literally have a couple of minutes left. We still have some time. I can't help but ask about something that, especially lately, has sharply, in my opinion, increased, including videos and the use by Ukrainian defense forces of ground robotic complexes that perform a very wide range of functions. And there are even videos now showing one GRC rescuing another GRC, evacuating it. Please tell us, how common are GRCs on the Kharkiv front, and accordingly, what range of functions do they perform?
If we talk about the Kharkiv direction, this is the main arena for GRC operations. There are units here that use them extremely effectively. And we have literally the full range of actions that can be carried out with GRCs. There have been cases when a GRC held a position on its own. There have been cases when a GRC captured prisoners, and there have also been cases of using them for evacuation purposes, for carrying out logistical tasks. This is no longer something unusual, it's already a trend. So yes, this is our main testing ground, and what's important is that the GRC manufacturers here listen directly to the people who operate them. And this is very important because there is feedback, there is two-way communication, and there is a certain effectiveness in this interaction.
Mr. Victor, thank you very much for your explanations and information. Let us remind our listeners and viewers, of course, that for the first time in history,
of course, the training will be conducted according to the main standard of the armed forces of Ukraine, but it also has its own specifics, its own approach to ensuring that the person receives not just basic training, military training, but also the ability to survive on the battlefield and accomplish the assigned mission so that further on, excuse the tautology, to carry out subsequent tasks, of which there are currently an extraordinary number facing the armed forces, especially the combat brigades, and not only them. Therefore, it is clear that this approach, which has been developed, and I hope, most importantly, that this tool will be implemented in practice, has been forged in the crucible of our battles. It has undergone the necessary trials, and, of course, this decision matured precisely among those people who have tremendous experience, combat experience, and they understand who should come and by what principle to prepare for the combat brigades. Therefore, accordingly, this decision has been long awaited. Now, the main thing is that within the brigades themselves, this approach, which was promoted, which actually came from the commanders themselves, from our soldiers at the front, from zero, is directly implemented here in practice. And that people received the best training and, in fact, as I already mentioned, carried out the tasks assigned to the armed forces of Ukraine.
Mr. Serhiy, of course, we can't let you go without at least a quick overview of what's happening along the line of contact. Moreover, the information attacks on Kiev by the Russians are no fewer, in fact, I would even say more, especially when it comes to, for example, the Kharkiv direction. Thank you. Please explain what is happening. I'm interested again in the Kharkiv direction in connection with these media moments that have appeared literally today. Huliaipol, Pokrovsk, Lyman, Siversk, you know it all. Please go ahead.
I absolutely agree with you and also state the fact that today there will be significantly more information dumps from the Russian aggressor regarding events at the front. And we are already seeing this conveyor belt, starting with the enemy's attempts to cut off the south of our country, particularly Odessa, from the Black Sea through information warfare. In fact, to cut off our entire country from our ports. Accordingly, there is a proposal here which has already been voiced that Putin, he could start this detachment, for example, with the help of the crew of the cruiser Moskva and so on down the list. It's actually very large. If we talk about the Kharkiv direction, as I understand it, this is about participating in the corresponding information and psychological special operation. Such a rather nasty bird as Solovyov. Why was he dragged there, supposedly to Vovchansk? Some unknown location? By the way, just a request, as with Kadyrov, give us your locations because you're threatening us, so our birds need to know where to fly. And so that the air defense systems of the Russian Federation don't interfere. Why is there so much disinformation being spread? Because when the enemy, well, the hybrid nature of the war is clear, but when the enemy can't achieve what they expected even the day before yesterday, let's say, then of course it's necessary to trigger emotional reactions so that Ukrainians themselves would start these reactions, start hating, begin to stir up a certain group of people, let's say in an Odessa style, shouting about betrayal, and this affects the troops. Well, of course, if such information reaches the units like, look, it turns out you've already retreated here, or even worse, as the Russians say, you've run away, then naturally it's impossible to achieve anything significant on the battlefield. If things don't go as desired, then of course such narratives will be spread. This doesn't only concern the Kharkiv front, of course. We're talking about Lyman, we're talking about Siversk. None of the Ukrainians today are making such statements in our information space. That is, no one is saying that things are calm or that nothing is happening in these directions. The situation is extremely difficult. This is being stated by the highest military and political leadership of our country. Obviously, we also have certain problems that need to be solved specifically with the help of commanders and soldiers. It's a good thing that it's our army fighting and not social networks. In fact, along the entire front, we can see that the enemy's tactics remain unchanged today. It is an attempt to infiltrate our large population centers. In fact, we have talked with you not only in this informational project about how the enemy will try during the autumn-winter period to enter our settlements, get bogged down in large population centers, start urban combat, and essentially try to spend the winter under such conditions. As of today, we see that these deadlines are not being met. By and large, the enemy has not managed to do this. Of course, I am not talking now about Mirnohrad or Pokrovsk. The situation there unfolded somewhat earlier and according to a slightly different scenario.
And wars. It was precisely in the Kharkiv direction that an attack was carried out exclusively with the use of ground and aerial robots. This is Kharkiv region. Mr. Victor, once again, congratulations on the holiday. Viktor Tryhubov, head of the Communications Department, Joint Forces Grouping. Well, and let us remind you, friends, on the day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, greetings are flying to our defenders, both men and women. Here is what Commander-in-Chief Sirsky said.
Dear defenders of Ukraine, today is our day, the day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The armed forces are a mirror of Ukrainian society, reflecting who we are as a nation. We are united, persistent, and unbreakable. This is the strong foundation of Ukrainian statehood. The modern Ukrainian army is hardened, trained, and technologically advanced. The army is aware of its historic mission. We have no right to repeat the mistakes of our historical past. We must persevere in the war for freedom and independence. And we will definitely persevere. We want to end this war more than anyone else. But we know for sure that no model of security guarantees for Ukraine is possible without our armed forces, without the Ukrainian soldier. On the day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, I want to congratulate every defender, everyone who brings victory and long-awaited peace closer for Ukraine. It is an honor to walk this path with you, shoulder to shoulder in the same formation. I bow my head in memory of everyone who has fallen in our struggle. Your sacrifice will be repaid and will not be in vain. Though paid for in blood, we are moving toward our goal: to inflict military defeat on the aggressor, to preserve Ukraine, to defend its independence and freedom. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.
And so 184 combat engagements took place on the front line over the past day. The Pokrovsk direction remains the hottest. There, the Russians attacked 51 times, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. On the Kostiantynivka direction, the occupiers stormed 27 times and 19 times on the Lyman direction. The Russian occupiers struck at the positions of Ukrainian units and populated areas. 53 airstrikes. They launched more than 6,500 kamikaze drones and carried out nearly 5,000 shellings. And once again, a new system for distributing mobilized soldiers among brigades will be introduced at the front. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that a decision was made at the headquarters. Brigades will be reinforced with new recruits every month, even before they begin their basic training. This will make it possible to plan training and personnel rotations. Deputy Head of the President's Office, Pavlo Palisa, clarified that the training of mobilized soldiers will be conducted according to the standards of specific brigades. Currently, 37 combat brigades have the right to conduct basic training independently. They plan to expand this list. This and more will be discussed. Let's continue. Joining us is Serhiy Brachuk, military expert and spokesperson for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. Mr. Serhiy, congratulations on the holiday.
Glory to Ukraine, glory to the Defense Forces. I also congratulate everyone involved. And of course, first and foremost, we remember our fallen, we honor the living, and may everyone return home.
Mr. Serhiy, we will definitely talk about what is currently happening on the front line. To begin with, I would still like to draw our viewers' attention to the fact that today is the day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The Armed Forces are now one of the most modern armies in the world, and yet reforms continue to take place. And so we were talking about the decision to provide monthly reinforcements of personnel to the combat brigades of Ukraine's defense forces was made at the staff meeting. Mr. Serhiy, let's talk about how important this step is and what it means for the modern Ukrainian military.
You know, as always, it's kind of a national tradition for us. I saw more critical responses let's say, comments about what happened, although in reality, these were mostly expressed by people who are not military. We anticipated and suspected that first and foremost, the discussion would be about combat brigades being reinforced. First of all, and what is appealing, because in the world this is absolutely the right approach, is that every brigade receiving new recruits will be reinforced. You're asking, of course, the situation here is complicated. The enemy, they are trying to use infiltration tactics, carrying out corresponding regroupings. But even here, we see that they are trying to exert psychological pressure through Dobropilia, not in Donetsk region, but in Zaporizhzhia region, you see. And the enemy is also trying to exploit this. Dobropilia in Zaporizhzhia region is under the control of the defense forces. Our assault troops are working very effectively here in the Huliaipol sector. Other units have also been brought in to establish a new line of defense and prevent the enemy from achieving the successes it hopes for. That's a very brief summary.
Yes, Mr. Serhiy, nevertheless, we have just a couple more minutes. Wonderful news is coming in from the ghosts of the main intelligence directorate. Another enemy Buk missile system has been destroyed. This concerns the Zaporizhzhia region. In that case, since we're on the topic, I'd also add the Ryazan incident here. The oil refinery once again. Can we somehow summarize here what's happening and how it's affecting things?
As for Ryazan, as far as I understand, this is already the 9th strike there this year. And I think this won't be the final number before the end of 2025. Accordingly, these are strikes on the oil refining capacity of the Russian Federation. It's hitting them in the pocket. And we're hitting them quite effectively. And we're hitting those greedy hands of the so-called Russian world as well. As for the Zaporizhzhia region, accordingly, the territory is temporarily occupied specifically in this Zaporizhzhia location. I think this, is an example of how our fighters operate. First of all, how our partisan underground movement operates, providing the necessary coordinates. Let me remind you that it is in Zaporizhzhia where enemy logistics are often hit, and this is the southern front. All of this is moving specifically toward the southern territories, and accordingly, these strikes reduce their capabilities. Right now, it's not about the millions destroyed or how much that military equipment and weaponry cost, but rather that this is systematic, targeted work, and in fact, it is also taking place on the Crimean front. By the way, I suggest that from now on, we always refer to what is happening in Crimea as the Crimean front. It is effective. There is no physical presence of ours there, or rather not yet the presence of our infantry, but we do have our partisan movement there. There are underground fighters. In fact, that's the Crimean front. Every day there is some news. I hope that very soon we will receive more news from the ghosts and not just ghostly news.
As they say, people don't argue about deadlines, they negotiate them. Mr. Serhiy, thank you very much for your explanations. Once again, congratulations to you, your brothers in arms, and your sisters in arms on the holiday. Serhiy Brachuk, military expert and spokesperson for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. Friends, I urge you to remain vigilant. Enemy tactical aviation activity in the southeastern direction. The Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is warning about this. Accordingly, we see several regions marked in red, including parts of Sumy and Chernihiv regions. We will return in particular to the air raid alert map. And now it's time for the news. With Marina Kukar. See you soon.
Today is the day of those thanks to whom Ukraine exists. The day of our armed forces. Across the country, a number of ceremonies are now taking place to honor our soldiers. And the main ones are in the capital, with the participation of the country's top officials. Volodymyr Zelensky congratulated the soldiers and presented them with awards. Some were awarded posthumously. Unit commanders received battle flags and ribbons of honor.
In defending Ukraine, our army has changed. So much so that now it is, in many ways, a model for other armies around the world. But changes must continue, and they will. Our army must be as modern as possible in every aspect. I congratulate all of you, Ukrainian soldiers, on your Armed Forces of Ukraine Day. I am proud of you, Ukrainian defenders. Ukrainian women defenders, I thank every family of Ukrainian soldiers. We thank the mothers and fathers of our true heroes.
After that, the president visited wounded soldiers in one of Kyiv's hospitals. He spoke with the fighters who are currently undergoing treatment after severe injuries. Zelensky thanked the defenders and honored them with state awards. Awards were also given to the medics who save the lives of defenders every day and help them recover after the most severe injuries. On the front line over the past day, there were 184 combat engagements, with more than 50 enemy attacks being the most intense. This was in the Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka directions. The Russians advanced near Shcherbinivka and Pleshchivka. In the Lyman sector, the occupiers tried to advance near Nova Horivka, Zarikne and Kolodiazy. 10 clashes took place in the southern Slobozhansky sector over the past day.